Alright, I guess I'll post a story or two if that's fine. This one obviously isn't mine, but it's a retelling of the Pensacola Sea Serpent encounter. I'm gonna do it in green text, cause I like green text. March 24th, 1962, Pensacola, Florida. 5 teens want to go freediving off the wreck of the USS Massachusetts. The 5 teens, all male, are Eric, 16, Warren, 17, Larry, 15, Brad, 14, and finally, Edward McCleary, 16, who is the one recounting the story. The USS Massachusetts is about 2 miles off the coast, on a sandbar. Because of this, part of the wreck can be seen sticking out of the water. They grab a raft, change into their bathing suits, spot the part of the wreck sticking out of the water, and start paddling towards it. The water is extraordinarily cold. On their way to the ship, a storm starts coming in. They decide to paddle back to shore, but they instead get washed out to sea. They tried to wave down a boat for help, but the boater was apparently stupid and just waved back. They instead decide to tie onto a nearby buoy and wait out the storm. Their boat capsizes, but they manage to flip it over and climb back on. They wait out the storm. The sea finally becomes calm. Everything goes completely silent, and a heavy fog rolls in. They all sit there and make small talk for a bit, waiting for the fog to disperse so that they can paddle back. The water around them becomes much warmer. Larry hears something in the distance and tells everyone to shut up and listen. Suddenly, the smell of dead fish hits them, and they hear a massive splash. The waves from the splash were big enough to break over the side of the raft. Through the fog, they see something that looked like a 10-foot tall telephone pole emerge from the water, straighten up, pause for a moment, then arch and dive back underwater. They all get confused, especially being that they didn't even properly see the thing due to the fog. McCleary jokes that it was a sea monster. Why would you say that? They start hearing a high-pitched hiss, which sounds like it is getting closer and closer with each succession. They decide to put on their diving fins and jump into the water. This part sounds a bit odd, being that it seems like no sane human would jump into the water with a supposed sea monster. McCleary later justified this, claiming they were all terror-stricken and feeling the need to escape, decided to leave the tiny raft. McCleary tells everyone to swim for the wreck of the USS Massachusetts. Behind them they hear more splashing and that weird hissing sound. The fog starts to clear up, but the water starts to get colder, rougher, and night starts to fall. Every once in a while, Eric would call back to make sure everyone was fine. Eventually, they hear a scream lasting about 30 seconds from behind them. They hear Warren call out, "Help me, help me, it's got Brad, I've got to get out of here." Warren's voice was suddenly cut off by his own screams. Everything goes silent. They can't find Warren and Brad. Not able to do anything, the 3 remaining boys continue swimming. After a while, McCleary looks around and realizes he can't see Larry. They dive down, trying to search for him underwater. They can't find him. They decide to keep on swimming. Eric starts sinking due to cramps, so McCleary grabs onto him and they swim together. It's the dead of night now, and everything is pitch black. Nearby lightning lights up the area, and they find that they are pretty close to the USS Massachusetts. A giant wave separates the two, but both keep swimming for the ship. As lightning lights up the area once again, McCleary sees the telephone pole-like figure break the water, open its mouth, and dive on top of Eric, dragging him down into the sea. McCleary describes the creature as having a neck that was about 12 feet long, brownish green, and smooth looking. The head of the creature looked like that of a sea turtle, only elongated and with the fuck ton of small, sharp teeth. He did not see any fins on the creature's sides, but claimed that he saw a dorsal fin on its back as it was diving. The eyes looked green with oval pupils. McCleary pulls himself onto the wreck of the ship and stays there for a while. There is no sign of Eric. He eventually works up the courage to get back into the water and swim the 2 miles to shore. He claims that he did not remember swimming back to the shore, but instead imagined himself peacefully sinking to the bottom of the sea and laying on the soft sand. Interestingly enough, this sort of blissful peace is also reported by surviving drowning victims. Eventually, he finds himself back on the beach. He finds the strength to pull himself out of the surf. He finds a nearby tower that he climbs into and falls asleep in. He sleeps for a while, hearing strange voices in his head throughout the entire night. He wakes up, falls out of the tower, and some kids find him face down on the beach. He gets sent to a nearby hospital. Hospital claimed he was suffering from shock and exposure. The director of a search and rescue team comes in to talk to McCleary. McCleary tells him the story, of which the director surprisingly believes. A news crew also interview McCleary, but decides not to run a story about the sea monster. According to Coast Guard reports, McCleary swam for over 5 miles and was in the water for nearly 12 hours. Interestingly, the news article altered this fact, claiming that McCleary only swam 2 miles. I have no idea why they would fabricate something this mundane. A body washes ashore a couple of days later. It is the body of Brad. Autopsy report claims that Brad drowned. That is the end. To my knowledge, they never found the bodies of the other kids. Oddly enough, there have been reports of similar-looking sea monsters off Mobile, Alabama, which is only 50 miles away. It's a pretty interesting story, and is convincing enough in some ways to make me think that McCleary either saw, or thinks he saw, a sea monster. The North Shrewsbury Navesink River is one of the most scenic estuaries on the eastern coast of America. Known for luxury yachts, stately homes, and ice boating, it is hardly the place you would expect to find the legend of a sea serpent. But, in the late 19th century, it was the location of one of many well-documented and unexplained sightings of mysterious sea creatures that plagued the waters of the North Atlantic. The creature in question was seen by several people, all of whom were familiar with local sea life. While returning from a day-long outing, Marcus P. Sherman, Lloyd Eglinton, Stephen Allen, and William Tinton, all of Red Bank, encountered the monster. The Red Bank Register reported the witnesses to be sober and respectable local merchants. At around 10 p.m., the yacht Tetsuya, owned by Sherman, was making its way back to Red Bank after a picnic at Highlands Beach. The men had enjoyed a pleasant Sunday evening, escaping the warm early summer weather. The moon was shining bright, providing for high visibility as the yacht cut through the water. A still summer breeze was blowing, and they rounded the highlands and headed toward Red Bank. At the tiller of the Tetsuya, Marcus Sherman steered through the familiar waters. At the bow was Lloyd Eglinton, who kept watch for debris in the water ahead. Suddenly, Eglinton yelled that there was something in the water dead ahead. Sherman steered hard to port to avoid the collision. As they looked to see what the obstacle was, they were shocked. There ahead of them was the sandy hook sea serpent that had been sighted many times over the preceding 2 years. So credible were the sightings of the serpent 2 years earlier that Scientific American had run an article issuing an opinion that the monster was in fact a giant squid. The article, complete with drawings, appeared in the December 27th, 1887 edition of the prestigious Scientific periodical. The earliest sighting at Sandy Hook had been made by several credible witnesses, most notably the members of the Sandy Hook Life-Saving Service. The crew members had sighted a large monster in the cold waters just off Sandy Hook in November 1879. The sighting was so credible that scientists were dispatched to take statements. It is from these descriptive statements that it was determined the Sandy Hook sea monster was, in fact, a giant squid. For the next several years, there were reports of all types of sea serpent sightings up and down the East Atlantic coast. What the Red Bank men saw was surely no giant squid. It was described as about 50 foot long and serpentine in shape. It swam with snake-like undulations slowly and steadily through the water. As it passed halfway past the bow, its head rose from the water, giving forth a mighty roar. The head was described as small and somewhat resembling a bulldog's in shape. It had two short rounded horns on its head, just above its eyes. The eyes were said to be the size of silver dollars. Bristles adorned the upper lip of the monster, much like those that would be found on a cat. The beast's nostrils were quite large and flattened. The serpent-like body tapered to a sword-like pointed tail. The frightened man stared in disbelief as it slowly and leisurely swam towards the shore of Hart's Home Cove. As the monster disappeared into the night, the men made their way back to Red Bank with a monster of a story to tell. The men of the Tetsuya were not the only ones to see the sea creature. Other boaters on the water saw the serpent and gave near identical descriptions. In all, over a dozen boaters had seen the strange creature on his nocturnal swim. Over the next months and years, there would be other sightings of the monster in the Navesink. In time, it came to be known as the Shrewsbury sea serpent. No scientific explanation was ever given for the sightings, as had been done for the so-called Sandy Hook sea serpent. However, the description is not totally without merit. Other than the size, the description is very similar to that of the oarfish. In any case, the mystery remains as to the true identity and fate of the sea serpent. Tetsuya, the monster of Lake Tahoe. The state's largest freshwater lake, Tahoe has long been rumored to be home to both an underwater mob graveyard and a huge, unknown creature. A story often told around Tahoe is that a few years back, a fisherman trolling off the south shore got his hook caught on something in the deeps. When he finally freed it and reeled his catch back to his boat, he found a well-preserved human ear on the end of the line. Another version of the tale has the fisherman snagging a three-fingered human hand. According to local legend, the 900-foot deep waters off South Shore served as a dumping place for mob victims from the 1920s to the 1950s. Hundreds of gangsters' corpses were suspended in the depths, they say, preserved from decay and prevented from gas-bloated surfacing by the near-freezing deep waters. So pervasive is this tale that many local fishermen refer to this area as the graveyard, and a Tahoe boat mafia execution was featured in the climax of The Godfather Part 2. Even stranger are the tales of Tetsuya. Locals maintain that a large, unidentified, serpent-like creature lives in the deepest parts of the lake, and usually appears around June in even-numbered years. Dubbed Tetsuya in imitation of Loch Ness Nessie, the beast allegedly appears in Washoe Indian legend and may have first been spotted by 19th century settlers. Tetsuya made headlines in the San Francisco Chronicle on July 12, 1984, when the paper reported that two women had seen the Lake Tahoe Leviathan a month earlier. Tahoe City residents Patsy McKay and Diane Stavrakis were hiking above the west shore when they spotted the creature swimming in the lake. McKay said the beast was about 17 feet long. She watched it closely and saw it surface 3 times, like a little submarine. Her companion said that the creature had humped back and seemed to surface in a whale-like, lethargic manner. She was also sure that it was not a diver, a log, or a large ripple. 2 years earlier, a pair of off-duty Reno policemen had also taken a turn with Tetsuya. Officers Chris Beebe and Jerry Jones were water skiing in the lake in June 1982, when an unusually large creature swam by them. Yet another story told about Tahoe asserts that there is an underground river system that links the lake with Pyramid Lake in Nevada. Apparently, the bodies of people who have drowned in Tahoe have surfaced in Pyramid Lake, 50 miles to the north. This phenomenon, however, might be due to the corpses floating over the North Tahoe spillway onto the Truckee River and then downstream to Pyramid Lake. The closest anyone ever came to figuring out Tahoe's mysteries was in the mid-1970s. Famed oceanographer Jacques Cousteau brought a mini submarine to the lake and did several dives in search of the 1,600-foot bottom. He returned to the surface, allegedly saying, "The world is not ready for what is down there," and to his death, refused to release any pictures or data from the expedition. What did the legendary diver find? Pinstripe-suited, bullet-ridden corpses bobbing in the dark depths, a colony of living amphibian dinosaurs, or something even weirder? The answers lie in the chilly depths of Blue Lake Tahoe. Be me, straight out of high school. 93 on ASVAB, or whatever it's called. Go on the sub-route, sonar tech. Year and a half of school. Finish in under 10 months. Get stationed in WA. Part of training is listening to a bunch of sounds. Basic stuff, engine noise for every type of boat, sounds of torpedoes, whatever subs sound like. Spent days listening to stuff like this. Finally time to go underway. Few months go by and everything is normal. One day on watch. Sitting in front of the computer, listening to the ocean. See an extremely strong, very narrow sound start. Start listening in that direction and checking what frequencies it is on. What the fuck is this? No sound at all. All sensors are indicating that everyone should be hearing this. Mess with bearing of sensors. Pass a little to the left of it. Holy fuck, what is this? Even after all of these years, I can still hear it clearly. Screaming. The sound of hundreds of voices crying out in agony. Keep listening and watching the screens and seeing my computer give off readings I've never seen before. Snap out of it and try to get the supervisor's attention. Can't even give the proper report. Supervisor quickly listens in and looks at my screen. Ask what could possibly make this sound. Tectonic plates moving is the answer I get, and I'm told to drop it. Listen to the screams for another 40 seconds, then all sound stops. Computer shows the massive sound's energy disappear. The rest of the deployment hours go without a hitch. Get back to base. Spend hours in the lab trying to find anything that sounds like that. Nothing is even remotely close. To this day, I still don't know what it was. Hundreds of screaming voices, all sounding like they were in agony. So I guess it's time to drop this one. Been saving it for a while. Mood is right. Fred is spooky. Be my grandfather. World War II, Gato-class submarine crewman. Sub is out on patrol east of Japan somewhere. Hunting some smallish Japanese Coast Guard ships. Everyone is deathly silent, so as not to give away position to listening ships. Suddenly, everyone hears whispering in Japanese. Obviously, nobody could translate. He said it sounded like a young man's voice, but some other voices, women and men, were whispering under the main voice in unison. Suddenly, the electricity goes out. Absolutely dark. The whisper rises to a yell, then a scream. Screaming stops. Electricity comes back on. Everyone's scared shitless. Then, everyone hears a long scraping all the way down the hull, from bow to stern, as if fingernails were trying to rip the metal hull apart. Keep in mind, they are probably 200 feet deep at this point. A week passes. They have sunk 2 small merchant ships and are headed back to refuel and get more torp. He says they all hear quiet singing in Japanese. Then something begins tapping on the hull to the beat of the singing. I showed him the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star song from Dead Space, and he says it was almost exactly like that, except in Japanese. Some of the crewmen faint. Granddad said he felt extremely nauseous at this point. One of the officers has a heart attack. He says he can't really explain the tension or fright in those moments, but he has never been more scared in his life. He was trapped in a metal box, hundreds of feet below the surface, tormented by Japanese water spirits, His words, not mine. Once they were out of Japanese waters, they surfaced for air and let the crew stretch out. On the hull, at the base of the conning tower, is a line of Japanese characters. Some crewmen copy it on paper and translate it. Translate it into black water, black ship, black souls, black curse. Says there were 4 parallel scratches along the starboard side, bow to stern. Not exactly security, but I work in shipping. This happened 5 years ago, but it boggles my mind to this day. Be me. Have watch on bridge together with 1AB. Very young man, but responsible and competent. Nothing happens. Boring shit you always get in Biscay Bay. Everything as well. AB tells me he sees another ship. Look up from console and onto radar. Check AIS and comms. Nothing. I assume it could be a small pleasure craft. Strange, but not entirely unlikely. Take binoculars and ask him to show me. Both of us look where we spotted the ship for a few minutes, but find nothing. Tell him his mind probably connected some shapes, and it is nothing. 10 minutes later, he sees it again. Get kinda rude, but check anyway. Nothing. Assume he is just over-enthusiastic. Ask him to describe the ship. He describes a huge ship with a tall superstructure and actual turrets. Ask him if he consumed alcohol or other drugs, because battleships are not used anymore, and he is an idiot. Hear a ship's horn. Run to comms, because I thought I fucked up, and there is a ship nearby. Nothing on any system. AB tells me to look port side. A fucking battleship goes past us, without even disturbing the water. Maybe 50 meters away from us. Ask Chief Engineer to come up and look right. He sees it too. My face when. He only tells us to not look at it directly. What? This fucker knows more? Is he still alive? Can you ask him or talk to him about it? He is very much alive and employed, but I don't know on what vessel or his contact, since the crewing agency does not tell us, because EU data protection nonsense. However, we obviously asked him afterwards what the fuck we saw, and why we should not look at it. He only responded very defensively, and didn't really tell us anything of any substance, except that it's not an uncommon sight, and that these ghost ships would bring bad luck if you looked at them for too long. But otherwise, they're supposedly harmless. On other occasions, before we saw the ship, he also told of more ridiculous shit, which nobody really believed. But after what happened, I am more inclined to believe him. The things he also talked about, and take that with a grain of salt, because I think he was also just messing with the Never guys, include weird stuff like sirens and mermaids in the Med, lights mimicking lighthouses, and that sounds terrifying as fuck, and more reasonable things like St. Elmo's fire and milky water, which is just physics and biology at work. I also have some more stories of strange things myself, but they aren't really scary, just strange. On a side note, for a time, I was also considering that we saw a real ship adrift and abandoned. However, these don't move swiftly and straight like they are propelled by engines, and obviously give off radar signatures and are affected by waves and affect the waves too. Furthermore, they do not sound horns. The world's oceans are vast, enigmatic places, full of countless mysteries and strange sights, yet the mysterious secrets of the seas are not confined solely to what we can see, but rather also what we can hear. Far from the stoic, silent underwater world many may imagine, the acoustics of the ocean are in fact awash with a constant cacophony of seismic activity, boats, sonar, marine creatures, crackling icebergs, undersea volcanoes, and many others. While many of these sounds have definite, known, or mundane sources, there are others that have long managed to elude any sort of easy explanation. These are the eerie, unexplained sounds that pervade our planet's oceans, standing out from all the others as oddities that continue to defy simple answers. Many of the mysterious audio anomalies of the ocean came to the attention of scientists with the help of a network of underwater microphones called hydrophones, which was set up in the 1960s by the US Navy for the purpose of monitoring the movements of Soviet submarines. This network was called the Sound Surveillance System, or SOSUS, and was sprawled out along the ocean floor throughout various regions around the globe. The microphones were typically located on the seabed deep below the surface, in a place known as the Deep Sound Channel, a place where sound can travel thousands of kilometers due to the effects of the unique pressure and temperature gradient inherent to the zone, which effectively funnel sounds without any interference across vast distances. For years, the SOSUS system was used exclusively to listen in on the audio signatures of submarines and track their locations, and the various other potential scientific applications for such an extensive network of deep-sea hydrophones were never really explored. It was not until the end of the Cold War that the network's primary purpose became obsolete, and the system of hydrophones was allowed to be accessed by civilian scientists. By analyzing the audio signatures of incoming sounds as they arrive at different microphones, scientists were finally able to locate and analyze a whole new domain of acoustics, and also one of mystery. What they heard down there in the depths was often able to be fairly quickly identified due to each sound's unique sound signature, but the scientists also realized that many of the sounds were not so readily categorized. These mysterious noises of the deep come in a myriad of different types. Some are low frequency and others high, some short bursts and others long, continuous wails, and some happen only once in a while others can go on for years. The one thing they all have in common is that nobody really knows where they came from. One of the strangest of these enigmatic sounds is the one known as upsweep. The sound was first detected in 1991, emanating from across the entire Pacific. Besides this vast range, upsweep showed a bizarre and totally unprecedented sound signature, the likes of which no one had ever heard before in decades of listening in on ocean sounds. Upsweep is comprised of persistent, ongoing narrow band upsweeping noises that last for several seconds each. To the ears, the sound itself is described as sounding like the wail of an ambulance or the undulating howl of some huge beast. In addition to its haunting audio signature, upsweep exhibits some other rather unusual characteristics that add to its mystique. The impressive geographical range of the sound makes it difficult to attribute it to any one localized source. Upsweep is additionally very consistent and uniform in nature, which is unlike the sounds produced by underwater volcanoes or earthquakes. The sound is also highly seasonal, always peaking every spring and autumn for no discernible reason. Furthermore, it has demonstrated remarkable longevity, occurring at peak volume continuously from 1991 to 1994, and even after that, reverberating through the ocean at a lower intensity. The sound is seasonally audible even now, and no one is quite sure what it is. One of the first ideas was that upsweep was caused by whales, but this theory was quickly abandoned as the volume was simply too high for any known whales to generate, and also did not move around from season to season like the song of migrating whales should have done. The sound also was much too uniform to be attributed to whales, whose songs are typically highly varied in their range, pitch, and amplitude. Seismic explanations were also considered as well, but the uniformity and constant nature of upsweep did not fit in with what is typically heard for these events. It was also suggested that the sound could be caused by simple water movements and currents producing a noise something akin to that of the wind. It is thought that perhaps the sound is caused by the oscillation of some liquid as it reacts to coming into contact with lava, and one team of researchers think they have identified the origin of this sound as being in the southern Pacific, in the vicinity of volcanic activity, yet the sound does still not conform to the known sound signatures of such events. Despite these various theories, the origin of upsweep remains a mystery. Another bizarre mystery sound is referred to as slowdown, and was first detected in the equatorial Pacific Ocean on May 19, 1997. It has been heard several times a year since, in both the Atlantic and the Pacific, and has been picked up on hydrophones nearly 5,000 kilometers apart. Slowdown is so named for its unusual characteristic of slowing down gradually over the course of 7 minutes. It has been described as sounding like an airplane going by. Slowdown has typically occurred too far from SOSUS hydrophones to get a good fix on the exact point of origin, but one thing that has remained consistent is that it always comes from the south. This has led to speculation that it is perhaps emanating from the Antarctic. It was thought that the sound could perhaps be the result of military exercise using some new technology, but the Navy has denied any such activity in the area and maintains that the sounds are not man-made. One theory for the sound has been that the noise is created by the friction created by icebergs grinding against each other, the ocean floor, or even land to come to a halt, which would account for the slowing characteristic and eventual sudden stop of the sound. Additionally, the sound signature of the slowdown has shown to be somewhat similar to that of icebergs scraping together. At the moment, the exact source of the sound remains unknown.